My modest aim in life is to bring about a complete transformation of the world, a metamorphosis, nothing less than a renaissance, a 21st century renaissance, which would be more far-reaching and sort of more probing than the 15th century renaissance that brought the Middle Ages to an end, more or less. As you'll see from a slide I hope to be putting up later, the Renaissance that we need, the 21st century Renaissance, has to embrace absolutely everything that we do and everything that we think seriously about, just actually as the last Renaissance did. But it should begin, or it can begin, and I think it should begin, with what I am calling, others are calling, the agrarian renaissance. In other words, it should begin with agriculture and with food culture. The reasons for this are pretty obvious, but I'll spell them out. First of all, agriculture is the most important thing that human beings do. If the computers had crashed in 2000 like they were supposed to do, it would have been dreadful and it would have killed a lot of people. But nothing like the devastation that would be caused if agriculture were to pack up for a week or two. I mean, half the human race could be dead. It's the thing we absolutely have to get right. It's at the center, agriculture is at the center of absolutely everything. It's implicated in everything. And if you look at all the disasters in the world, and there's plenty of disasters, political, economic, sociological, and of course, ecological, collapse of the biosphere, agriculture is implicated in all of them, and in some cases is the sole cause of them. So it's absolutely the thing we have to get right. Secondly, or thirdly rather, that's three, it illustrates all the principles that I think we have to get right. And fourthly, which is very important, despite appearances, despite the fact that the whole food chain seems to be sewn up by a few corporates, backed by some of the world's most powerful governments, including ours, but particularly, of course, the US, and backed, therefore, in turn by military power, which is sometimes brought to bear, despite the fact that it seems so sewn up, it is, in fact, amenable to change. And that, as it were, is the good news, that the most important thing that we have to change could, in theory, be changed. The thing that we need, what we really need, is what I've been calling enlightened agriculture. And enlightened agriculture, a grand-sounding term, sometimes shortened to real farming, but what it means, very commonsensically, is farming that is expressly designed to provide good food for everybody, forever, without wrecking the rest of the world. And the good news is that this is eminently possible, actually. Technically it's possible. All we really need to do is to do simple things, which we know about already, do them well. However, the agriculture that now dominates in the world as a whole, it isn't the biggest form of agriculture, but it's the dominant form, is what's called conventional. And conventional agriculture is, in fact, industrial agriculture. And industrial agriculture in its present form is geared entirely to the neoliberal economy, which is designed to maximize wealth. And therefore, what is called conventional agriculture, which in fact is nothing like conventional, is not at all conventional in any worthwhile sense of the word, should be called neoliberal industrial agriculture. So what we've got, on the one hand, what we need, is enlightened agriculture, which is expressly designed to provide good food for everybody. And what we've actually got is neoliberal industrial agriculture, which is designed to maximize wealth, which is a quite different ambition and which leads us in quite different directions. Enlightened agriculture has three essential components, none of which I might say I thought up. The first is agroecology, which means that you have to treat individual farms as ecosystems and agriculture as a whole as a positive contributor to the biosphere. And incidentally, the word biosphere, which means living world, is far to be preferred to the word environment, which simply means surroundings, which in the hands of politicians simply means real estate. It should make a positive contribution to the biosphere. That's agroecology. The second great principle is that of food sovereignty. And food sovereignty simply means that everybody everywhere should have control over their own food supply. If not every individual, then every society. And the third great principle of enlightened agriculture is economic democracy, which sort of self-explanatory, but I've got no time to discuss it tonight. But I will talk about agroecology. And agroecology is agriculture that essentially emulates nature, because what we need is agriculture that is on the one hand sustainable and on the other hand is resilient, and nature has been sustaining itself for 4 billion years through the most incredible changes of climate and everything else, topography. So it is both sustainable and resilient, and we should ask how it does it. And nature achieves this by three means. First, by being very, very diverse. Secondly, by being low input. It only makes use on the whole of what's around. And thirdly, by being very close, tightly integrated, so that nothing is wasted in nature. That's not quite true, but I'm having to go very fast. The point then is that nature is very, very complex. If we want to emulate nature, therefore, create true agroecology, we need farms that are very complex. And if they're very, very complex, and because they're very diverse and low input organic, and if they're very diverse and complex, then they need to be skills intensive. In other words, we need lots and lots of farmers. And Britain at the moment has got about 1/8 of the number of farmers it really needs to farm properly. And it could do with about 1 million more just for starters. And if you have lots and lots of farmers in very complex systems, there is little or no advantage in scale up. So in general, the kind of farms we need here and the kind of farms we need the world over are going to be small to medium sized. Neoliberal industrial agriculture, which is designed to maximize wealth, is also therefore designed to maximize productivity, because there is a simple relationship really between productivity and wealth, because the more you produce, the more you've got to sell. That's basically it. And if you design your agriculture to maximize wealth, then the kind of things you need to do are the precise opposite of the kind of things you need to do if you're seriously interested in producing good food for everybody. In other words, if you're seriously interested in agroecological enlightened agriculture. Because if you want to maximize production and maximize profit, you've also got to minimize cost. And the way to do that, so long as oil remains affordable, is to farm with big machines, to use loads and loads and loads of industrial chemistry, to the point where modern agriculture, so-called neoliberal industrial agriculture, is really just a branch of the agrochemical industry. You need, well, as a kind of sop, I think, and as a kind of extra piece of gimmickry, you have biotechnology, which takes the form of genetic engineering, which we're told is essential and all that stuff. The technology itself is brilliant, but applied in the form of GM crops, it's a complete irrelevance, really. It's not going to contribute anything, and it hasn't contributed anything. In order to maximize profit, minimize costs, the way to do that is to minimize labor. So so-called modern agriculture, NI agriculture, is minimum to zero labor, the work increasingly being done by by zero robots. And if you do all these things, maximum productivity at minimum cost with maximum machinery and industrial chemistry, it pays you to do it on the largest possible scale. So farmers are encouraged to merge or to scale up, and farms in general are considered modern if they're huge. Whereas, as I said, the kind we really need we're going to be small to medium-sized. There are farms in the Ukraine which are bigger than Kent. I mean, that's what sort of modern industrialization really leads us to. In other words, as I said, the official strategy of our government and the American government and the powers that be in general is the precise opposite of what we really need. Now, we need to get from where we are, which is this reliance on neoliberal industrial agriculture, to enlightened agriculture. It's a radical shift, and there are three ways to bring about radical shift in theory. One is by reform, step-by-step incremental change. That is necessary, but it's absolutely not sufficient. There is no simple path that can take us from where we are to where we need to be. The second way to bring about huge change is, of course, by revolution. But if you go down that path, you really don't know how it's going to turn out. I mean, all political action is non-linear in its effects, but revolution is non-linear in spades. No revolution has ever turned out the way its instigators intended it to do. The third way is this word renaissance, where you simply say, let us start again. Let us build the world we really want to see in situ. Now we get to the other bit. This is my contribution to original thinking, that you cannot, this is all the things we need to do. The thing we're focused on tonight anyway is enlightened agriculture coupled with this thing called food culture. Food culture means that you have a society of people who really care about food, give a damn, knowledgeable, who will support enlightened farmers. But the point is that nothing can be achieved in isolation. If we simply focus on trying to make farming better or on trying to sell better food, we're gonna get so far and no further. It's going to fail because everything else has to be right. First of all, which is the goal, we have to specify what it is we're trying to do. And what I'm suggesting we should try to do is to create convivial societies within a flourishing biosphere. In other words, provide good food for everybody, but make sure we look after the biosphere as well. However, we can't have enlightened agriculture and food culture unless we get the infrastructure right, unless we have an economy which is sympathetic to this, which the present economy certainly isn't. We need a government that is actually democratic, that actually represents us, which the present government certainly doesn't, and therefore supports economic democracy, which in turn will support good things. And we need law, which is on the side of humanity, in other words, just law. But none of this is going to happen unless we dig really deep. I've called it, and dig right down to what here I've called the zeitgeist, but which I think should probably just be called worldview. In other words, all the big ideas that we take for granted, more or less, which feed into our view of what the world is like, feed into our attitudes, because attitude in the end is all. And I suggest that the worldview is compounded of four main ingredients, the first of which, in no particular order, is science, which tries to answer the question, how does the world work? And the second of which is morality, which answers the question or addresses the question, what is it actually good to do? And both of these things are rooted in metaphysics, which has gone missing from the present way of thinking. And metaphysics asks the ultimate questions like, what is the universe really like? I've got 2 minutes. What is the universe really like? And what is the root of goodness? And how come things are like they are? These are the ultimate questions, as they're called, and they're no longer asked, and they need to be. And finally, of course, we have the arts, which I regard as the joker in the pack, and which always is asking us, why do we take ourselves so seriously, and what should we really be focused on, and so on. So this is what the Renaissance as a whole amounts to, and the agrarian Renaissance is part of it. Last point, however, shouldn't be the last point, but it will be, the powers that be, in other words, the oligarchy, which consists of government and the corporates, and increasing sections of academia which are dependent on the corporates and on governments like ours for their money, is, as I've said, moving in totally the opposite direction. It is therefore they are not going to bring about the Renaissance. And if we want serious change, we can't wait for the government or the corporates to bring it about. We have to initiate. I mean, we, all of us, ordinary Joes, have to initiate and bring about the Renaissance that we all need. This makes it radically different from the Renaissance of the 15th century, which was initiated by intellectuals and bankers. Now, to this end, to do all the kind of thinking that we really need to do, I and others, including my wife, who's somewhere in the audience, have founded the College for Real Farming and Food Culture, which has this email address. And it's an invitation to stay in touch, because we're trying to run seminars and produce all sorts of stuff which will help the Renaissance to come about. But it can't come about without the involvement of people at large. Thank you very much.